CCAC to be this kind of one-stop shop, that can help countries like Brazil to find the best way to mitigate their emission, at the same time as we can find funding, calls to get money, showcase best examples. So we are really happy to be that. We also want to be part of the Breathe Life campaign with the World Health Organization. Next year, we're going to have a summit in Colombia, so we all want to be there to make sure that the air quality agenda gets finally inside the climate agenda. Brazil next year wants and believes that we can have a very breakthrough agreements in order to get to where we want. We are still very far away from where we need in order to achieve the Paris Agreement. And I hope that somehow Brazil can use the presidency of the G20 now, BRICS and Mercosur next year, COP30 next year. Also, we are going to host CCAC and other events so that we can coordinate all these agendas. Well, I think for my initial remarks, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you a lot, Adalberto. Now, following our panel, we'll see a little about the Breathe Cities Global Strategy with Mike Sexton, Director for Breathe Cities at Clean Air Fund. And then we'll show after Latin America initiatives from the Rockefeller Foundation and the national initiatives from Institute Climate Society and others. Please, Mike.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. My name, give me the mic. My name is Mike Saxton, and I am Project Director of Breathe Cities. And I'm based in the UK, and this is my first visit to Rio, so it's very good to be with you all. Breathe Cities is a partnership between Clean Air Fund, who I work for, C40, the network of cities that works with mayors, and Bloomberg Philanthropies. And the overall aim of Breathe Cities is to reduce air pollution by 30% from the 2019 levels across 100 cities globally by 2030. So that's our big target that we're aiming for. Initially, we're starting work in 10 cities in a kind of deep and thorough way, and Rio is one of those 10 cities globally. So a little bit first about the why of air quality, which many in the room will know already, but actually, and also why air quality in cities. As you'll know, there's a big global trend of increased proportion of the population globally lives in cities, and the kind of air quality globally in cities is also deteriorating. So you've got a growing global population, growing portion of people in cities, and worsening air quality in cities too. So we really need to work together to bend that curve. Also, air quality very much sits at the intersection of climate and public health at Clean Air Fund. In all of our work, whether that's international, national, or at a city level, we look for projects that have both a reduction in greenhouse gas emission and a positive public health benefit too. So we see air quality very much as that intersection. And particularly illustrated by the chart on the left-hand side of compared to WHO guidelines, pretty much every region of the world, the average air quality is significantly worse than WHO targets. In terms of the kind of starting to get into a bit more on Breathe Cities particularly, and we also see actually there's both the kind of causes and the solutions for improving air quality as being very similar to a number of the key solutions that are required to address climate change. We also hope, this is not universally true, but hope that air quality is a less politicized issue than climate change is in some places. And so actually making a public health argument, making an argument around air quality that's more locally based is a good way to persuade and bring people along with the necessary changes. These are the cities where Breathe Cities will work. I want to tell you a little bit about what happened in London and Warsaw. They were two cities where there were early Breathe projects. London was Breathe London was the very first project, and the two key interventions that were made were broadening the number of low-cost sensors. So they're really kind of hyper-local, kind of neighborhood level data on air quality. And then that was combined with a large-scale public campaign to educate the citizens of London on the impacts of air quality, particularly on health, on children's health too. And so the outcome of that was the policy around the vehicle low emission zones in London that was recently expanded by Mayor Khan. And so London now has the kind of the largest vehicle low emission zone in the world. We also done early work in Warsaw, where there were two key policy changes made. One was a shift away from coal as a source of household heating into more renewable heating sources, and then also a kind of vehicle low emission zones too. So that gave us the confidence to actually, can we scale this model globally? And these are the cities where we are expanding to over the next in two stages, firstly through till mid-26, and then we hope from out to 2032. Sorry, that slide's a bit small, but let me just tell you a little bit more about what is the Breathe Cities model? We think there's three key elements to effective action on air pollution that cities can take. One is data and evidence. The second is stakeholder and community campaigns. And then the third is policy assistance. So what does that look like in practice around data? It could be monitors, it could be more localized evidence of the health impacts in specific cities. The stakeholder and community campaigns can be working both with the political system and working with society as a whole on education around the impacts of air quality. So in various different countries, we've run campaigns focused around schools, campaigns focused around the kind of lower socioeconomic groups and who are often the most exposed to poor quality of air. And the policy assistance is about working in partnership with city governments of what is one key policy that can really have a meaningful impact upon air quality. And then over time, we hope to build a bank of knowledge that can share best practice across cities around the world. It also very much leads us into sectoral level solutions as well, whether that's transport and shift towards public transport or electrification of fleets. In some places, we're looking at waste burning, as the minister said, as well as interesting that is relevant here, and of sources of heating. And so those are kind of areas of where, depending upon what the city level priority, that Breathe Cities would look to intervene. So we're very much looking forward to hearing about what is happening and learning more about what's happening here in Rio and here in Brazil, and building out from how to actually turn the national air quality law into something that can be implemented in practice. Thank you very much.
So good afternoon, everyone. I am Victoria. I was formally invited to moderate this panel, so I was not aware that it was in presence. So very nice to be here with you. I am part of the Institute for Climate and Society team and in charge of our industrial agenda. So now I would like to continue this panel. I'm very happy to call Mr. Sanchez. Garduño, to explain us how he sees the air quality agenda developing in Latin America and the Caribbean. Javier, sorry. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Victoria. I will be speaking in Spanish. So thanks for the invitation to the city of Rio de Janeiro and also to our Clean Air Fund. Les voy a presentar rápidamente el trabajo que hacemos en Resilient Cities Network. Somos una red de ciudades que actualmente trabajamos en 96 ciudades del mundo, en 5 continentes, en más de 47 idiomas, y somos una red que está apoyando a que las ciudades puedan finalmente sobrevivir, adaptarse y prosperar frente a los grandes retos que están enfrentando en temas climáticos, ambientales, sociales y políticos. Y finalmente, esta es una iniciativa que nace hace 10 años. La Fundación Rockefeller, cuando cumple 100 años de vida, crea este programa que en su momento se llamó 100 Resilient Cities, apoyando esquemas de planeación urbana con enfoque de resiliencia en 100 ciudades del mundo, y eso hace una comunidad de resiliencia que actualmente se convierte en la red de ciudades resilientes, Resilient Cities Network en inglés. Somos una red liderada por
a network of resilient cities. We are a network led by cities. In our global committee, we have representatives from cities that take strategic decisions, an organization based in New York, Singapore, Mexico City, among others, as how regionally we are approaching in different ways. We are based on partnership programs. We know that we need to work in teams, in collaboration, so that cities can evolve. These are the cities that are part of our network in Latin America and Caribbean, in Brazil, Salvador, Rio de Janeiro, Porto Alegre. About Porto Alegre, we'd like to send them our greetings of solidarity in this difficult moment because of the huge floods that affected that region. We understand the resilience, urbanism is the capacity of individual communities and institutions to survive, adapt themselves, and grow without thinking of chronic tensions, which are the gradual elements that hinder the capacity of response of cities, and impacts are events that suddenly affect cities. And everything we see in the region is very often things are connected. This is a discussion we follow since the beginning of the journey today, such as mitigation and adaptation are part of the same solution. When it comes to resilience, we see this in most cities in the region. We see that mitigation problems are connected to adaptation problems. If a city has a bad transportation system, that will increase greenhouse gases and increase pollution, and that makes cities less strong to respond because people are using their individual vehicles, not having a relationship with other people, with very unequal and not very solidary cities. And this impacts this capacity of cities of surviving, adapting, and growing. As I said, we have programs to support cities. These are intrinsically connected to the air quality agenda. First of all, the program we have developed 2 years ago together with a foundation in New York, this program, Urban Power, identifies if cities may evolve through energy resilience and other things that may be implemented. And from there, we manage to get funds for specific projects. In the case of Rio de Janeiro, we're working with water treatment entity to install solar panels in their facilities so they are more efficient in energy use. In Cali, we're working together with a local energy company to install solar panels in households with high levels of vulnerability to reduce the costs for the poorest households in the city when it comes to their electricity bills. We also do energy profiling to identify large challenges and what can they do to face these challenges. Another program we have is Urban Ocean, a program where we accelerate projects to combat plastic pollution on coastal areas, and we develop pilot projects to have a mechanism to have secondary use of solid waste such as plastic. In Panama, we have developed a project that culminated in the installation of a mechanism that now makes it possible to make turn plastics into benches for urban public spaces. And we have learning mechanisms in the case of urban power. We have exchanges with the city of Cape Town where we will join all the cities that participate. So every city generates horizontal learning processes, especially those located in the global south. In India, we are going to have another meeting where everyone is going to share their mistakes and their knowledge. And knowledge is supposed to be recognized as an important part of implementing projects, and that has to do with the city resilience. And with the Rockefeller Foundation, we have the Urban Pulse, where we tackle the challenges connected to public health and equity. We deal with diseases that didn't exist in certain cities, but now they are given climate change because of heat islands and the increase in heat waves. And now people are having to deal with situations that were unknown in the past. And that reduces the capacity of cities to react. By using pilot projects, we will find innovative solutions. We are still also part of the philanthropy and collaboration system, not just collaboration with large organizations as well as multilateral banks, but also working locally with and for the cities where a lot of learning is shared as well as mistakes so that cities can adapt and prosper. Thank you so much. I'm really enjoying the conversations.
There is a change in the channels for the translation. I don't know if everyone is aware. The channel in Portuguese is the channel 20, and for Spanish is the channel 2. All right? So now I'd like to continue inviting Mr. De Simone from the Institute for Climate and Society. Walter De Simone is the leader for subnational governance in the Institute. So please.
Muito obrigado, Vitória. Obrigado, pessoal.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. I will be very nationalistic and I will speak Portuguese. I am going to take advantage of the translation into English and into Spanish. I am going to tell you about a success story, how our institute worked on air quality in Brazil in the last 10 years, and what we have to learn with this. And looking into the future, what we can take as benefit. First there's a caveat. When you work with philanthropy, you say, well, we haven't done anything. It is our grantees that have done it. People that are listening to us online version that is here on the first row. These are the people that are doing things. So this is what we saw and did to facilitate an ecosystem of institutions so that things could happen. Everything started not because of air quality, but more because of urban mobility. We understood that one of the best ways to reduce greenhouse gases would be to change a mass transportation system, turning it more sustainable, more used. And then there was an opportunity in the city of São Paulo to change emission patterns so that we could get new buses coming in with a better standard. They could be hybrid, they could be electric. So the idea was to change that. So there was an opportunity. So we thought, let's go into São Paulo, let's try and change the city law. São Paulo has the biggest fleet of buses in the world with 15,000 vehicles. So then we could start with this. We started with campaigns. We started with a number of campaigns, communications, advocacy. So it was a dual front. On the one hand, bringing awareness to the population when it came to air quality, that is a problem. I always remember well with this campaign, we placed masks on all the statues, and that had great effect and a direct communication with the population. Why? The idea was to mobilize voters to tell their representatives that the law had to be changed and not postponed, with the objective of improving air quality. I'm sorry, this is so much spoiler because I'm moving forward. How do I turn this back? Okay, here I am. I found it now. Well, you have seen my end, so I'm nearly finished. Just kidding. So then we started a joint work with communication, technical issues, advocacy to work on the São Paulo case. It worked out well. São Paulo changed the city law and created an obligation that the next buses coming into the fleet would come in with a new technology. But then everyone started to work together, got really excited, the power got to their heads, and they thought, why don't we expand to work nationally? How do we get out from the São Paulo case and we start thinking of Brazil as a whole? So then we started to work with technical experts. Studies started to show the situation, the state of knowledge. We have the manual from Vienna showing the air pollution in capitals, major capitals. I coordinated the study, so I needed to show WR Brazil, the state of air quality in Brazil, with a number of authors, including Evangelina, who's here, Paula Tasha, Maria de Faucha from the University of São Paulo, to show how this would impact this discussion and how air quality was in Brazil. So everybody got together to make a coalition because they enjoyed working together so much. It joined about 20 institutions that were willing to work together to talk about air quality, which goes way beyond what's apparent. There's a climate issue, but there is a basic element that deals with health that transcends the case of São Paulo because it talks about the right of children, deforestation, the right of the elderly, and a number of organizations, technical organizations in philanthropy, in communication, technical studies in the health area, in transportation, pedestrians, cyclists, built an expanded group that started to grow organically. It was a WhatsApp group and then created a demand for stronger action driven by a number of these actors you see on the screen. So then we started to take advantage of opportunities. Things that were not originally in the plan started to emerge. The Superior Court of Justice, there was a judgment on a CONAMA resolution where the our institute came in, a number of stakeholders participated, and then we started to occupy some legal spaces, some political spaces. This as the Supreme Federal Court is court that issued this judgment. So we could see that the actors, the stakeholders were working together. Institute ARM was mentioning a study from some other institution at the coalition. So then we started to occupy a space which was way beyond what we had anticipated initially. So the coalition started to participate in discussions in air quality national policy. They helped us with advocacy, they spoke with the legislative branch, and what started as defining air quality through transportation in the city of São Paulo started to gain space, 2,000 electric buses, the Federal Superior Court also taking decisions on air quality until the day that the National Congress, in 8 years of work, approved the National Air Quality Act. It's some progress, but not so much compared to the size of the problem. Now we have a national policy for air quality in Brazil, finally, and that has been approved just recently. It was actually last month. Adalberto has mentioned it. But it's interesting to stop and look at this as a decision from philanthropy to focus on a very specific case, a very specific topic, and how this helped support a snowball effect, again, built by people, institutions, an ecosystem that started to relate in an unplanned way. Victor is here to confirm what I'm saying. We have a great Rio de Janeiro watchdog institution with an institution collaborating with consumer protection and so on. So we started with advocacy, air quality campaigns. The São Paulo Assembly approved an act, a coalition defending a bill. The Supreme Court, then the bill was advancing, driven by all this partnership and advocacy until the policy for air quality was then approved by the president. Well, it's been a journey that was highly unexpected because we started with something that was very small, and then we managed to insist and support, making sure that these relationships developed, and then we managed to reap a lot of benefits that were unexpected. So we have a lot to celebrate. However, as a good member of the third sector, we celebrate and then we say, what now? And there's so much what now. The problem is huge in Brazil. 13 of the 26 states have an automatic air monitoring station. You're not supposed to understand this. These are the states on the vertical axis, and horizontal is the elements of air quality before the law. What's green, it's what's been accomplished. So our challenge is huge. It's giant. But we have a framework, we have a law, we have obligations, we have new ways of putting pressure. We have the Supreme Court with a position when it comes to CONAMA. We have a lot to do. And this has been built with very hard work from so many organizations under the perspective of philanthropy to build an ecosystem. This was the first focus. by insisting, well, we're going to do it, we're not going to do it, we should insist on this topic. When we did the first thing, we didn't expect this result. Working with multiple tools and having stakeholders that are not usually working together. So together with very highly technical experts, macroeconomics, modeling, with people from the health sector, working with doctors, the people from representing pedestrians and cyclists. Suddenly this takes shape.
Takes on multiple narratives that reach out to multiple stakeholders, that grows over time with a lot of discussion. And the coalition was fundamental for that, to be a more permanent discussion forum. And all of a sudden, we come from here to here. And I think we harvested many fruits along the path with lots of difficulties and challenges, a lack of funds, and there's not a lot of engagement in this sector. Well, not now that we have our friends with us here, but for a long time, we were one of the very few organizations that were able to look at this. Okay, it's a climate issue, but we should involve the climate guys, and it's about urban design. So I think we still need to engage a group of funders to look at this more carefully, because the impacts are many and very tangible. If you look at the studies, you see that if you improve a little bit of one thing, you're going to save lots of lives. And now let's talk about implementation. If you're from Latin America, you know, we have several different beautiful laws, but they need to be implemented. And now we're going to go through this process of implementation. So it's not over yet. This is part one. We've ended chapter one, but we have many chapters ahead of us and we cannot give up. We should keep on strengthening this ecosystem. And these institutions need to keep on being strengthened. We need to keep on supporting this work and to be able to get explicit cases of success in implementation. How can we really have cities be the champions? How can we show that there is a metropolitan region somewhere that was able to implement something with the federal government? Okay, let's get the federal government involved. Let's get more funding for these institutions. So we have a very interesting and positive path ahead of us, because on the other hand, we've never had this much support. And it's important to keep on developing that. And lastly, I'm just going to go back to this list because, again, you can see how many institutions, these were the players that made this change. These are the people that we have to support to keep on doing this job. It's a job that involves dozens and dozens of people working together for a long period. We work with climate. Many people work with the climate here at ICS, so sometimes it's hard to have a long-term perspective. Anyway, quick victories are very important. We need to make. I think this is just maybe a case of hope that proves that we can do it and that philanthropy has a good role in this. And new organizations will come up and do the work that we need. We just need to be patient and we need a lot of investment, but we can do that. Thank you.
Amazing, Walter. Thank you so much. So thank you so much. Very inspiring. And I'm really happy to see your perspective on be patient with the change. Yeah, I'm very anxious right now with our working on industry, which is an opportunity also to integrate with the air quality agenda. And yeah, sometimes we just need to be patient. So now I would like to invite Evangelina, the Executive Director of Instituto AR. She will provide the perspective of a grantee, our organization that was directly involved in all these changes. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Vanessa. Victoria, sorry. Eu vou então dar continuidade a essa linda apresentação do Walter.
So I'm going to pick up on what Walter was saying. He was humble. He didn't tell us that he initiated this process. He was with us, and he joined us in the Climate and Society Institute, and he wanted to bring us all together because civil society has several difficulties in Brazil. We have to say that. We have challenges in terms of fundraising, in terms of administration. So he brought this opportunity for this group of players to work together, and it is a sum of efforts, each one of us working on their own expertise and counting on other people's support. And that's why we were so successful. And he started with this idea. So we had to have him talk about this subject. So now I'm going to talk about the Instituto AR. I'm going to talk about Instituto AR, but as a reminder, we have the other organizations, the Respirar Coalition and ICS, that's giving us this opportunity. So the AIR Institute is the voice of health when it comes to climate discussion. We work with climate, especially air pollution and climate change, with a focus on health. We've been around for 15 years, and we are a national reference in this regard when it comes to health. And the Institute was founded by a group of physicians initially, and has been working since then with 4 portfolios, basically with engagement, communication, energy, and transportation. The right to clean air, and the forests, and the use of land. So what is Brazil's current situation today when it comes to these 2 subjects in terms of public policies? We've always found it difficult to establish a dialogue with all 3 levels of government, and we had a lack of administrators that had the courage to take on this fight. This government, this administration has been bringing us several opportunities, and Adalberto is leading this. He's one of the people that's leading this, and he is making lots of changes. He's been an air quality secretary for the last 2 years. We have the resolutions that are set forth by the National Environmental Council. We have few laws, and now we are really celebrating the fact that the national air quality policy was approved. We know that being a law, it will give us a different perspective in terms of the air quality management. And there is still a big difficulty in terms of the states. The states have to abide by the laws, and they have to do air quality control. We don't have a lot of enforcement when it comes to the states. So I see that the federal and municipal governments are more advanced than the state governments, probably because the state governments are responsible for managing air quality. It's also very important to say that for this work in air quality and climate, I don't know at what point would be if it were not for the civil society, because the states find it so hard to take care of these aspects. I won't go over this busy slide, the timeline shows the air quality policy, but what really made the Instituto R successful in working with the implementation? When the congressman wrote the policy in 2018, it was a two-page policy, and I called the congressman and I asked him if he wanted some help in writing the policy. He said he did. And from 2 pages, it became 30 pages initially. They waited for us to finish writing. And when we did that, they submitted it to the analysis of the environmental committee of the lower house that started in 2019. You can see that from 2019 to 2024, it's a very short period for us to approve a national policy for air quality control, especially if you consider the pandemic. So the approval was very fast, but it did take a lot of joint work. We had 3 public hearings during the course, and we invited everybody. We did a public hearing. We also chose the senator that would be the rapporteur of this policy at the Senate. So the work was really the result of a joint activity and a close connection, which led us to the approval of the policy ultimately. And of course, there were vetoes at the end, but it's still a huge achievement. Now we have an air quality policy, and we could not have any hope for it before that. These standards are very dear to us, air quality standards at the Air Institute, because since we work with health, the air quality standards are the ones that define this connection between healthcare and air quality management. So we work with air quality standards since 2014, and we were invited by the public ministry after a survey that we did to work with them as a support, technical support. And we did that with them for a long time at CONAMA's meetings, and we did lots of surveys during this process to show in CONAMA's discussions how important it was for us to advance with the standards. In 2018, a resolution was approved, but it was too inefficient because they accepted that the standards should be the same as OMS standards. They defined intermediary goals on the way to getting there, but they didn't define any timelines. And we then sent them an appeal, and then they sued. They started a proceeding at the Supreme Court saying that the resolution was approved, but it was unprotective of the population and the environment. And they accepted the appeal, and they judged it as unconstitutional. So it was the federal, through the Federal Prosecution Service, that resolution that had been approved before went back to CONAMA with the decision that they should implement the timeframes and that it should start being protective. So this discussion about the standards is due to the Supreme Court decision. And now, next week we're going to have the last week of the CONAMA Technical Chamber. And incredible as it may seem, those that resist against the determination of the deadlines are the state-level environmental agencies. And now our proposal, like Adalberto said, is that we should approve the air quality levels recommended by the WHO to come into force in Brazil in 2044, 40 years later, to reach the recommended levels in 2005. And the WHO has already published a new guidebook in 2021, so we haven't even gotten there yet. And Brazil, for sure, would be one of the last countries to update its air quality standards. In the meantime, the population gets sick. So what are the key factors for our success in our case, Instituto R? Well, we place a health up front and center at the discussions. That's fundamental. If you're only talking to a group of people, you're sometimes preaching to the choir. And when they ask us to postpone the deadline, we say, well, we can't postpone it because each year that goes by without this law, the number of deaths increases. And the Institute, we do research for what's being discussed. For example, in this discussion about the air quality, we did a quick survey with 12 countries in South America about their standards, showing how far back Brazil was. So we do surveys and we submit them to them with evidence-based arguments so that we can discuss the hot topics of the period. Undoubtedly, the social engagements with the coalition and the other organizations, they see it and they help us in the discussion. And also this partnership that we had with the Federal Prosecutor's Office. And we have to be present at the public forums and hearings whenever we're discussing this subject, to be with them and present them with irrefutable arguments. At the Air Institute, like in many other countries, where international initiatives that are giving a voice to the physicians so that they can help with defense, with advocacy. That's very important. The physicians are a group that the population trusts in. Physicians can operate by being examples. So it's fundamental to get the physicians' involvement. We founded this movement 2 years ago. It's been growing. We have representatives in many states across Brazil, and we already operate with physicians. We deliver a letter to Marina advocating for the air quality standards. Only 0.1% of private social investment goes to the environment. And lastly, what are today's challenges? Civil society needs to keep on receiving resources. That's very important if we are to continue doing our work with the government. We need to have a very tight advocacy in terms of the states, and we need to involve the healthcare sector in the discussion. The next steps are the implementation of the national air quality policy and the monitoring of this law about clean buses and air quality standards. This consultation and network for monitoring in the Amazon, and we need to train physicians so they can help us in this fight against climate change and air pollution. Thank you, Walter, and congratulations one more time.
Thank you very much, Evangelina. So now we are having our final presentation. It's Sergio Sanchez, the Senior Policy Director of the Global Clean Air for the Environmental Defense Fund. He will present to us the tool, Air Tracker tool for air quality monitoring. So thank you so much, Sergio.
Muito obrigado. Eu vou tentar fazer minha intervenção em português. Minhas desculpas.
Thank you so much. I'll try to deliver this in Portuguese, and I'd like to apologize for any mistakes I may make, since I'm a Spanish speaker. I want to thank the organizers for the invitation, thank them for their presence and interest. I'd also like to thank my colleagues and introduce them, Tammy Thompson and Alex Franco, that are part of the team that's in Brazil these days. And I would like to share or to split this presentation in three parts. Let's make a long story as short as possible. The first one concerning the organization of the Environmental Defense Force, and the second about the Clean Air Initiative at the global level, and specific activities we're having here in Brazil. And lastly, an initial reference for this specific but very important tool that's called Air Tracker. So let's start with the Environmental Defense Fund. To those of you that don't know it, it's an organization that's been around for 57 years. It was created in the US. It was founded back at the time when chemical substances, especially DDT, were a big risk to health and ecosystems. So thanks to the efforts of the founders of IVF, DDT was eliminated through a legal action. The organization evolved over time, and it also incorporated the legal aspects, working with new economic instruments, with the involvement of businesses, corporations, and also civil society. And lastly, the IVF brand is related mainly with technological innovation. Maybe some of you have heard that the IDF, the EDF, Environmental Defense Fund, has launched an independent satellite to monitor methane at a global level, at previously unseen levels. So this allows us to develop science-based regulatory and economic instruments in combination with the participation of communities, as well as private funds and the government, to cater to the environmental needs. And the biggest challenge is climate change. And EDF, with its multidisciplinary team at a global level, is working on energy, transportation, and oil and gas, among others, as well as water, oceans, fisheries, with a very specific focus on health as well. And sister organizations such as the Air Institute and the Environmental Defense Fund are working together. In healthcare, we're also working on a matrix with the other EDF teams, and we have a program called Healthy Communities. And under this program, Healthy Communities, we have a global initiative, which is Clean Air. This initiative is operating all over the planet, especially the United States. We started working in the United Kingdom, London, Europe in general, India, China, Indonesia more recently. All of the interventions are revolving around this goal, which is to make visible what is invisible. We all know that air pollution tends to be an invisible problem to most of us, to public policies and the allocation of resources. So part of our main goal in this area is to make visible the invisible and to be connected with the big problems of climate change and also the connection of this problem with other industries, such as the agribusiness, forestry, and whatnot. So through this Clean Air Global Initiative, EDF had developed different projects using innovation. Just to mention a few cases, in the area of San Francisco, or more specifically, Oakland. So we worked with community groups to understand the air pollution levels and uncovered zones or zones not covered by regular monitoring, and to make a correlation with health. And for that, we established a partnership with Google using Google Streetcar equipped with sensors to measure air pollution in these areas, to understand the pollution levels to which we're exposed. And we combined this data resulting from this mapping to understand pollution at a very accurate level. We combined this data with healthcare data. For instance, in China and also Houston, we're using fixed stations for monitoring or also sensors, along with mobile monitoring installed on taxi cabs and other vehicles that drive through these high pollution areas to understand what the levels are in these specific areas where the levels can be very high and can serve as a basis to the work of inspectors so they can work on law enforcement. So I hope this discussion can continue. And we're also working on specific interventions in Latin America and the Caribbean. In the Caribbean, we have a regional recovery program under the umbrella of the UNIP's recovery program, and we're helping strengthen this cooperation across all the region's countries in terms of sharing best practices, capacity building, exchanging experiences, and also the exchange of ideas around policies. And in this collaboration in Latin America, we started last year a very specific collaboration with Brazil. Why Brazil? I met Adalberto Maluf, the secretary, many years ago. He called me and we decided that we would start a collaboration in Brazil. And here we're working basically on four main areas. One of them, and to answer one of your questions, was how can we have this national air quality policy become concrete actions through a strategy that defines responsibilities and actions, necessary resources, and others. So this is an area where we are collaborating. We have achieved a certain level of success, and we'll keep on collaborating now that the policy has become a law. Another fact is that we need to update the technical instruments of the policy. As you know, in Brazil, air quality monitoring is too different, it's heterogeneous, and part of the explanation for that is that the monitoring guidelines are out of date. So we would need to have an instrument to unify these efforts, and we're working on that, and we're going to have a partnership with CCAC for that, to join efforts that allow us to come up with a unified instrument to serve as a guideline for these sites to monitor air quality.
We also develop case studies, how, in this case, Brasilia, how they can update their monitoring system, the location of the stations, how they're operated, the control and quality assurance systems, the staff operating the stations, how this can be improved. And the fourth area of collaboration is adaptation of specific instruments such as air tracker. And here I'm nearing the end. The air tracker is a tool that has as its main purpose help and understand the relationship between the various levels of pollution in a specific location with the pollution sources that could be affecting this particular spot. In this sense, it's very important to have data. The monitoring must be more precise and representative. So we are starting in the city of Rio de Janeiro, and we are in the process of having a conversation with the state government, and in São Paulo with CETESB. Tammy and Alexon are our experts from Air Tracker. I'm just going to give you a very brief explanation, and then we can go into more detail. Let's say we have an air pollution hotspot. This is just to illustrate the area. If we go back, so here is an air pollution hotspot. And it could be related with neighboring pollution sources. So it is the location of sources as well as climate patterns. So the air tracker is a tool combining air pollution information, location of pollution sources in the area, and data as well as modeling of climate patterns, speed, and direction of wind using global models as well as local data, climate data, direction, intensity of the winds, and so on. This is just a brief introduction. It's a great pleasure to be working in Brazil, and I'm sure we're going to have new partnerships that is going to help us advance in our objectives. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Muito obrigada, Sérgio.
Thank you so much, Sergio.
Unfortunately, we'll have to close our session right now because the other one is going to begin. And I invite you to talk to our panelists and outside, or if you also wish, you can send email to Alex and then he can forward to our panelists. So thank you so much for your presence. We'll have to, okay, thank you. Não, oxi, oxi. Não, nem se preocupe, tamo junto. Olha a hora que eu cheguei.
I think our few new changes are very much. Obrigado. Thank you. But hopefully it translated well, that you enjoyed my presentation. I was terribly funny. Sure, you're funnier. I was terribly funny.
Nossa, eu quero muito.